I never thought I'd be in this situation. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about my wife, Jessica. We've been together for about 10 years now. High school sweethearts turned married couple. She was always a little difficult, bitchy, manipulative, with an attitude that could cut through steel. But I loved her. Or at least I thought I did. Things had been tense lately, but I chalked it up to the usual stress: work, the kids, life in general. What really started to bother me was how she'd started acting distant, secretive even. She'd come home late from her book club meetings, but I'd see her sneaking her phone away, typing away in the bathroom. She'd get defensive if I asked about her whereabouts. At first, I just figured she was sick of me, or maybe she was cheating on me, though I'd never suspected her of being this blatant. I mean, she's always been a bitch about my little flaws, but I never thought she'd actually cheat on me. Then one evening, I noticed her phone buzzing nonstop while she was in the shower. I was about to leave it alone, but something pushed me. I grabbed her phone and unlocked it. I don't usually do that, but I was curious. The lock screen was a mess of notifications, texts from some guy I'd never seen before, pictures, even flirtatious emojis. I scrolled a little and my stomach dropped. There were messages that explicitly talked about sneaking around, about how they couldn't keep their hands off each other. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My heart started pounding. Jessica was lying right there in the other room, probably assuming I was asleep or too busy with the kids. I stared at her momentarily, trying to process what I was seeing. The evidence was clear. There was no denying it anymore. She was cheating on me with our son's football coach, a guy named Mike. Apparently, this had been going on for months, during away games, during weekends, whenever she thought I wouldn't find out. That's when everything changed. I couldn't breathe right. My mind spun with questions. How long had this been going on? How could she do this to me, to our family? The betrayal wasn't just about the sex, though that was enough to make my blood boil. It was the idea that she'd lied and manipulated me for so long. I'd always been the one trying to hold everything together, while she was out there sleeping with someone who was supposed to be a part of our team, our community. I decided I had to confront her. I waited until she came out of the shower, her hair wet and her lipstick smudged from crying, or maybe just from her lies. When she saw the anger in my eyes, she immediately tried to deny everything, spinning some bullshit about how I was paranoid, how she was just friends with Mike, that I was overreacting. She said it was just a fling, a stupid mistake, nothing serious, that she loved me, that I was making a big deal out of nothing, but I wasn't buying it. I knew better. I felt this mix of rage, heartbreak, and disappointment all at once. I wanted to scream at her, to shake her, and demand the truth. Instead, I kept my voice calm, cold even, and told her I knew about the affair. Her face twisted into this bitchy sneer, like she thought she could lie her way out of it. She said that I was jealous, that I was insecure, and that I didn't understand her needs, that I was controlling. It was a typical Jessica move: blame me, gaslight me, make herself the victim. But I wasn't falling for it. Not anymore. I realized this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about her being a manipulative, selfish woman who thought she could get away with anything. I'd been blind for a long time, but now I saw her for what she really was. And I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. After I had confronted her, everything shifted in a way I wasn't prepared for. Jessica's response was classic. She doubled down on her lies, sneering at me and calling me insecure and jealous. She said I was overreacting, that Mike was just a friend, and that I had no right to accuse her without proof. She even had the nerve to say I was paranoid, that I was imagining things. Yeah, right. I stood there feeling like I was losing my mind. My hands were clenched into fists. I wanted to lash out, to scream at her for being such a bitch. But I held back, knowing that any anger I showed would only make her spin even more lies. Instead, I just told her she needed to leave. I told her I needed some space to think, to clear my head. She smirked, rolled her eyes, and said she was staying until she found somewhere else to go. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, trying to understand how a woman I'd loved for so long could do this to me. I felt a deep, physical pain in my chest, like someone had punched me there. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about the fact that I'd trusted her, shared my life and my feelings with her, and she had thrown it all away. The next day, I started digging. I knew I needed more proof, something concrete beyond her word and those damn texts. I went through her phone again, looked at her social media, checked her emails. I needed to confirm what I already knew. That's when I found the pictures. They weren't just text messages. There were photos of her and Mike, kissing in some hotel room, lying on a bed, her mouth on his neck. Seeing those images made my stomach turn. It was real. She was actually doing this. I thought about the times she'd been distant, the times she'd come home smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. I remembered her sneaking out late, her hurried explanations about meetings and girls' nights. It was all bullshit. She'd been out with Mike, fucking him behind my back. I felt a mix of rage and sadness I'd never experienced before. How could she do this? To me, to our family, to our son, Ryan. I realized I had to do something, but first, I needed to keep my head clear. I couldn't just explode and make things worse. I decided to gather all evidence I could, screenshots, messages, photos, and then carefully plan my next move. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to confront her with everything I had, but I also knew I needed to be strategic. Jessica was manipulative and bitchy, always ready with a lie or a sneer. She'd deny everything and probably spin some story about how I was ruining our family. But what really struck me was the realization that this wasn't just a fling. It had clearly been going on for months. During away games, during weekends, when I was working late, or taking care of Ryan. She had been lying to my face every single day, pretending to be the perfect wife, the loving mother. Meanwhile, she was out cheating with Mike, pretending to be innocent while deep down she was just a selfish, manipulative woman who had no regard for my feelings or our family. Now I was stuck in this mess, trying to figure out how to get out of it without completely breaking down. I knew I had to be smart, but my heart was heavy. The betrayal cut deep. I felt like I was losing the last piece of trust I had in her, and honestly, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to look at her the same way again. Once I had all the evidence lined up, screenshots of the texts, photos of her and Mike, I realized I needed to confront her again. This time, I couldn't be gentle or hold back. I was furious, hurt, and feeling more betrayed than I ever thought possible. I called her and told her I wanted to meet. She hesitated, but I told her it was important, and she finally agreed to come over that evening. When she arrived, she looked confident, like she still thought she could manipulate her way out of this. She had that condescending smirk, like she was already planning her next lie. I didn't hold back. I laid out everything I'd found. I showed her the messages, the photos, the times she was out, how long this had been going on. I told her I wasn't stupid, that I knew she'd been lying to me for months. Her reaction was bizarre. She tried to deny everything, but her voice cracked. Her eyes darted around like she was trying to come up with a new lie on the spot. She said it was just sex, that it didn't mean anything, that Mike was just a football coach and she was just curious or bored. She kept calling it stupid and a mistake. That's when I saw the real Jessica, the bitchy, manipulative side that always tried to blame everyone else. I couldn't take it anymore. I told her I was done, that I wanted her out of the house. I told her she was a cheating, lying bitch who had destroyed everything we built. I saw her eyes flash with anger, but I also saw a flicker of fear. She knew she had pushed me too far. I told her I was going to tell everyone, our friends, the team, even her family, what she'd done. I wanted her to know I wasn't going to be anyone's fool. That night I couldn't sleep. The emotional toll hit me hard. I felt angry, betrayed, and exhausted. I kept replaying the moments when I'd trusted her, when I'd believed she was faithful. Now, I wondered if I ever really knew her at all. I'd always thought I was the one who worked hard, provided for the family, kept everything together. Jessica was the one who played the role of the perfect wife, but it was all a facade. The worst part was the thought of how she'd betrayed me behind my back, during away games where I'd been sitting at home, clueless. She'd been slipping out, sneaking around, lying straight to my face. I always suspected she was hiding something, but I never thought she'd go this far. Cheating with the coach of our son's team. That's next level. It's like she wanted to destroy everything I cared about just to get her kicks. I also knew I couldn't just kick her out and walk away without consequences. My mind raced about how to handle this. Did I want a divorce? Or was there any way to salvage what was left? Honestly, I was leaning toward walking, but part of me still held on to hope that maybe I could fix this if she was willing to change. The problem was, I didn't see much remorse in her eyes, more like defiance. Jessica's the type to lie her way out of anything, so I knew I'd have to be careful. Right now, I just felt numb. The kind of numb that hits after you realize someone you loved has been screwing around behind your back. I also felt embarrassed, humiliated, like I'd been played for a fool all these years. But deep down, I knew I had to stay strong. This wasn't just about her cheating, it was about who she was as a person. And honestly, that realization was worse than the betrayal itself. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and difficult decisions. I spent most of my time going over everything in my head, trying to process how Jessica could have been so manipulative and selfish. I felt betrayed but also angry, angrier than I'd ever been in my life. Seeing her smug face, knowing she'd been screwing the coach behind my back, made my stomach churn every time I thought about it. I wasn't sure how to move forward, but I knew I had to do something. I started talking to some friends, guys I trusted, to get their take on the situation. Most of them told me I should just kick her out, tell her to pack her bags and leave. Others said I should try to work things out, but only if she was genuinely remorseful. Honestly, I was leaning heavily toward ending it. I couldn't see myself sticking around with a woman who lied to me for so long, who had no respect for our marriage or our family. I mean, she had cheated with Mike during away games when I was at home, probably worried I wouldn't find out. That's some next-level betrayal. Meanwhile, Jessica was acting like nothing had changed. She'd come over, acting bitchy and defensive, throwing around accusations that I was spying on her or being paranoid. She kept insisting it was just sex, that nothing serious had happened. She said she loved me, but I could see through her lies. She was the same manipulative woman who thought she could get away with anything. I told her she needed to leave the house, that I couldn't keep living like this, but she refused outright. One night, I decided I'd had enough. I went to her and told her she needed to pack her shit and get out of my house. When she saw I was serious, her face twisted into a sneer. She spat back at me, saying I was overreacting, that she'd never cheat on me if I just understood her, but I didn't want her excuses anymore. I told her I'd already made up my mind. I was done pretending everything was okay. I told her if she stayed, I'd call the divorce lawyer the next day. Her eyes flashed with anger and she stormed out, yelling she wasn't going anywhere. That night, I lay awake thinking about everything. The betrayal, the lies, the way she'd manipulated me into thinking I was the crazy one. I couldn't believe I'd let her get away with this for so long. All those years I'd thought I was the one holding everything together, working hard, providing for the family, trying to be a good husband. And she was out there screwing around with Mike, lying to my face, acting like she was the victim. I felt humiliated and stupid, but also a strange sense of relief. Honestly, I was tired of the lies. The next day, I contacted a lawyer. I didn't want to drag this out. I wanted to protect myself and our son from whatever Jessica had planned. I knew she'd try to spin it, probably accuse me of being controlling or jealous, but I had the evidence now, and that was all I needed. I was prepared to fight for custody and ensure she couldn't manipulate the situation anymore. I didn't want her to get away with this. As I sat there, poring over legal options, I realized I was finally taking control of my life again. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I'd trusted her blindly for so long, and she'd thrown it all away for some affair with Mike. But in some strange way, it also felt like a relief. I'd been dying inside, pretending everything was fine, when in reality I was just waiting for the inevitable collapse. Now that it had happened, I could finally start to rebuild. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Jessica had her bitchy ways, and she'd try to manipulate the situation, but I wasn't going to let her. I was done being the fool. I was done being the one who kept everything together while she screwed around behind my back. I'd face whatever came, divorce, custody battles, whatever it took. Because honestly, I'd rather be alone than with a woman who could do something so heinous and then lie her way out of it. That's where I'm at now, and honestly, I'm just trying to breathe and figure out how to move on from this mess. A few days after I decided to proceed with the divorce, Jessica's attitude shifted. She started acting even more bitchy and defiant, as if she didn't think I'd really follow through. She would come over, throw her usual snide comments, and just act like she still had some control over the situation. I could see her trying to gaslight me, arguing that I was overreacting, that everything was fine, and that I was just making a big deal out of nothing. But I didn't fall for her manipulations anymore. I'd seen too much and I knew her game now. One day she showed up at the house with her typical attitude, but this time I wasn't going to back down. I told her straight up that I was serious about moving forward with the divorce. I also told her I had gathered enough evidence to prove her affair, which I intended to use in court if it came to that. Her face twisted into a sneer, but I could tell she was shaken. She started ranting about how I was ruining her life, how she'd never do anything to hurt me, how she loved our son and was just confused. It was full of her usual lies, but I'd heard enough. I told her I didn't want her in the house anymore, that she could pack her things and leave. She yelled, calling me controlling and jealous, trying to make me feel guilty. But I stayed firm. I told her I was done playing her games. I wanted her gone so I could start healing and moving on. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. It was finally happening. I was finally taking control of my life. The following days were tense. I contacted a lawyer and started the necessary legal procedures. I also began planning how I was going to tell my son, Ryan. He was only 8, but I knew he could sense something was wrong. I didn't want to traumatize him, but I had to be honest without dragging him into the mess. I sat him down one afternoon and explained that Mommy and Daddy were going to live in separate houses for a while. I told him it wasn't his fault and that I still loved him very much. Watching his face, I saw the confusion and sadness, and it hit me hard. I hated that Jessica's actions had caused this pain. Jessica kept trying to reach out, but I refused to respond. I knew she was just trying to manipulate the situation and make me feel guilty. I wasn't going to let her anymore. I also started talking to some of her friends, or at least the ones I knew she hadn't totally alienated. I wanted to understand more about her schemes, how she managed to hide her affair so well, and whether there was any chance she'd try to spin it all to make me look bad. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. I had enough evidence and I was done being a fool. Every day now feels like a battle. I wake up angry, hurt, and exhausted, but I also feel a strange sense of liberation. Jessica might be bitchy and manipulative, but I'm not going to let her destroy me. I've realized that the only way to survive this is to stand tall and take control of my life. I've been betrayed, lied to, and humiliated, but I refuse to let her win. I want my peace, my dignity, and a chance to start over without her dragging me down with her lies and manipulations. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I do know one thing. I won't be her pawn anymore. I'll fight for my son, for my sanity, and for myself. Jessica's a manipulative, selfish woman, but I'm stronger than her bullshit. I just hope someday I'll be able to look back at this and see it as the moment I finally took control. Because that's what I need most right now, control. Looking back now, I realize that this whole ordeal has been one of the most painful experiences of my life, but also one of the most eye-opening. Jessica's betrayal didn't just hurt, it shattered the illusion I had of her, of us. I spent so many years trusting her, building a life around her, only to find out she'd been lying and screwing around with our son's coach. That realization hit me like a freight train, but in the end, it forced me to face the truth I'd been avoiding. I deserved better. I've learned a lot through this mess. First, trust can be fragile, more fragile than I ever thought. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Jessica's bitchy, manipulative side was always there, but I ignored it because I loved her. Now I see I shouldn't have. Love isn't enough. Respect and honesty are what really matter. If those are missing, the foundation of any relationship crumbles. Second, I learned that revenge or justice isn't about hurting her, though honestly, I'd be lying if I said I didn't want her to feel the pain she caused me. It's about protecting myself and my son from further damage. Cutting her out, gathering evidence, standing my ground. Those are the things that have given me a sense of control back in my life. Third, I've come to accept that sometimes walking away is the best choice. No matter how painful, no matter how much I still love her deep down, I can't fix what's broken when one side has decided to destroy it. I'm finally at peace with choosing myself and my son over her manipulations and lies. If there's any advice I can share, it's this. Never ignore the signs. When someone starts acting secretive, distant, or makes excuses for their behavior, pay attention. Trust your instincts. And if you find proof that they've been lying or cheating, confront it head on. Don't let the lies fester because in the end it only hurts more. This whole thing has taught me that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived the betrayal, I'm rebuilding my life, and I'm finally starting to breathe again. I still have a long road ahead, but I no longer feel like I'm drowning. That pain, that betrayal, it's part of me now, but it doesn't define me. I've taken back my life, and I plan to live it on my own terms from here on out.